I often get people asking me about MS and confusing it for ME, and sort of asking what goes wrong with MS. And I explain it a bit like it's a car electrical system, and where you get a problem in your brain or around your myelin sheath is where it goes wrong on your body. So it can affect anything from your eyesight to your mobility. I just want to show you a symptom today that I've got today, and has been to a lesser extent there for sort of about a week, but was better for a couple of days, sort of, and followed on from something else. I just want to show you. Right, this is my leg. Yeah, as you can see, I'm lying here with this here before. I have had something called foot flop, where my feet. What happens with foot flop is your foot goes like that, and it's the first time I've had it, and I couldn't move. You know, now you can see I can flex my foot up. Well, for most of last week, I couldn't flex it up. I was permanently stuck in that position, and it makes walking very hard because it means that your foot drags on the ground. In addition, my knee both my knees were quite bad, but my left knee has been particularly bad. I did have a fall a couple of weeks ago, but also it tends to just crumble underneath me because of the MS. And today my knee and leg have got worse and weaker, and particularly the left one, and so I've been struggling to walk, and it feels like my whole balance is off centre, and it feels like I can't stand up straight, and I can't hold myself straight. And this is something that happens as well. This is me trying to lift my leg up straight. I'm trying to lift it. I'm trying to do this. And this wasn't here yesterday. I can't. Yeah, so it's just like, it's impossible to control. And as you see it, the movements are very, if you look here, the movements are very jerky. Also affected is my hand, and the movements of my hand are a bit more jerky. I can feel it. It's perhaps not so visible, but the movements of my hands are a little bit more jerky than normal. So just to show you again, and then put it down. So as you can appreciate, moving around with that, it doesn't look like it would be too difficult, but it really is difficult, because I end up holding on to walls and holding on to sofas and bins and anything that happens to be in my way that happens to be stable enough to hang on to. It's other than that, it's not that disturbing. Vision at the moment, which it has done in the past. It feels like, it's hard to explain, it feels like having a bunch of needles stuck into your eyeball, and it's quite painful. It makes it very tiring to read, and very tiring to just go about your day-to-day life. And I find that I have to sort of, I get fatigue anyway, so I find that I have to sort of lie down and go back to sleep and have naps and things that I wouldn't normally have to do, and I'm sure that's exacerbated by the particular relapse I'm in at the moment. Also, it makes my speech is slightly being affected, and it makes me feel kind of not entirely sort of alert and with it and myself. Sometimes I get this weird pain across here, that like a weird sensation, almost as if it's a bit frozen. But it's and it's sort of like, it feels like it pushes down and it's frozen across here, which is very odd. And I also have I've been biting my tongue a lot, and on the sides of my tongue, and I have this reaction with my jaw where my jaw is sort of snapping shut a little bit too much. And I have this problem where if I'm eating something like a boiled sweet or something that's heavy, I have to be careful about how big a sort of how big an item of food I put in my mouth, because it sort of gets past a certain point in my mouth, and then I get an automatic swallow reaction, which just isn't very cool. And sometimes it's very odd, but even sometimes, if I take a swig of water, if I'm not careful, it can feel like all the way down my throat and my gullet. It can feel like it's too big for my throat, and which is not very nice. In addition to that, I mean, as a side thing, I also get restless leg syndrome, and if I don't take my vitamins and take my folic acid and iron and things, then I get this thing where I can't stop moving my feet, and it gets very irritating. I can be very irritating to sit next to at sort of a quiet talk or something. I was at a literary festival for children sort of the week before last, and I had failed to take my my folic acid that morning and my iron that morning, and I just I had to keep crossing and uncrossing my legs and moving my feet around, which just wasn't ideal. The worst case, when it gets really bad, I have to sort of get up and walk and stuff, but it's really horrible, especially at night, and especially if you get it in the night. I mean, mostly it's controlled by vitamins, but yeah, I mean that's there. I've had lots of things go wrong with it. I've had what have I had? I've lost the. I've had relapses where I've lost the strength in my arms and legs. It affects my spine. So my back gets very tired when walking. My legs get very tired when walking. My leg will start to drag if I'm walking a distance. Progressively, after the last few relapses, I've lost the ability to sort of sprint across the road, or which is really annoying. I think I probably I probably miss that most of all. Yeah, I'm back again. One of the really irritating things about MS is people are always saying that I look so well. In some ways that's great, but in other ways it's really not, because the implication that leads to, particularly in the current situation with the way that the current sort of god-awful policies actually that Ian Duncan Smith, George Osborne and the Tories have been bringing in, and the dreadful coverage that's been on the BBC and on programmes, in the media generally, on programmes like Saints and Sinners, etc. It's just encouraged this culture among people to sort of just look out for anybody that's cheating the system, and so or getting better than other people and things, and it's really it's really horrendous, because it means if your disability is sort of a bit invisible a lot of the time, then people tend to think it's not really there, and you tend to get I've had people come up to me in the street outside my daughter's school, and I've had people I've had a woman outside my daughter's then school, not the school she's in now, threaten me with a vendetta for using a blue badge, and scream at me from nowhere, and sort of basically back me into a corner by a fence, and just keep on yelling at me, which is just really really inappropriate and inoffensive, and the people concerned did not deal with it very well. You have situations where the people that you deal with in other areas of life, that it's all very well to say, oh yeah, it's like we're giving support because we're coming round to see you and check you're all right, or we're coming round we're phoning you up to see if you're okay. But that's not really support, actually, in terms of MS. I mean, it might be support if you were depressed, or if you had some mental illness that required somebody to come around and check on you for that. But MS actually, you know, the kind of support that that really means a lot to me is the friends of mine, you know, the friends of mine that have come round and helped clean up the flat, or helped, you know, when I've been tired, or taken my daughter, you know, for play dates, or to spend the night when I've had hospital appointments, or when I've got when I'm incredibly tired, or have given me lifts when I've had no vehicle, or have you know, or have sort of cooked meals, or you know, that sort of thing. That's support. Unfortunately, you know, unfortunately, you know, you need to be able to rely on that a lot more often. And it's very difficult for people to understand that, you know, you can look perfectly fine, and that the fatigue thing, you know, I can look absolutely normal. I can be, to all extents and purposes, totally normal. But if I don't follow the fatigue guidelines that have been set down by OTs and things, and I'm about to attend a fatigue clinic at the hospital to give me more advice, and I have to structure everything in my kitchen. You know, like if I wash up, for example, I have to put a couple of cups in with my glasses. It's within easy reach. I have to put my saucepans on the top of the hob where they're easy to get to, so I don't have to bend down to the cupboard too often to get things out. I have to, I have to do lots of stuff like that. And you know, every little thing has to be thought about and assessed as much as possible to get it into a situation where it's not going to tire me out more than usual. In situations like at the moment where I'm in a relapse, I have to take breaks in between doing stuff. I have to think about, you know, obstacles in the house, and you know, and not falling over things. I mean, I've fallen over. I trip over often, and I've fallen over everything from the bin, which I've squashed, to you know, to the sofa, to what else have I fallen over? Virtually, you know, you name it in this flat, and I've fallen over it. Sort of either fallen over on it or stubbed my foot on it, or you know, whatever. You've really got to sort of, you really need a lot more space, because the thing is with MS as well is when I'm walking around like Frankenstein, or like today I'm sort of surfing around walls and doors and that sort of thing, it means that you need more space to get around. So you know, if you don't have more space, you tend to collide with more things, and yeah, it just makes it difficult, because you're sort of swaying from side to side. You can imagine the way Frankenstein walks, and he kind of sways with his legs sort of apart to kind of try and stabilise himself a bit. It's not quite the same, but I mean, that's the best thing I can explain, the best way I can explain to the way that I have to move sometimes, and particularly at night and things, and you're you know, you're sort of trying to get around like that.